Coming up on Currently, Jakob Wheeler from the Glen Arbor Sun is here to talk about a controversy in Leland surrounding a local Youth for Christ group. Plus, Beth Milligan will share the latest city news and plans for a new development in Grawn. That's ahead on Currently. Welcome to Currently, where we discuss some of the top local stories directly from the journalists who are covering them. I'm your host, Crystal Frost. And this podcast was recorded on Thursday, January 8th. The Tigers, pitchers, and catchers are expected to report to Lakeland on February 11th, so we all have something to look forward to in the perpetual cold and darkness we call winter. Support for Currently comes from West Shore Bank. When you choose West Shore Bank, you're not just choosing a bank. You're choosing a partner committed to the well-being of our community. Visit them today on 8th Street or at westshorebank.com. Support also comes from Old Town Playhouse, where community comes together in downtown Traverse City. Find out about all the upcoming shows, including The Hobbit, starting January 16th at oldtownplayhouse.com. Welcome and Happy New Year, Beth Milligan, head writer for Traverse City Ticker. Hello. And Jakob Wheeler, welcome back, the editor of the Glen Arbor Sun.
Thanks, great to be here.
How are you?
Good to hear we're talking Tigers, pitchers, and catchers reporting in a few weeks.
You know, Beth and I both are sports fans, and we're both baseball fans. I love baseball, but I've really gotten into football, obviously, in the last couple of years. I think I would always say I'm a Lions fan, but, you know, you just sort of got used to a disappointment, right? Mm-hmm. But when baseball season comes up, that is... For me, that's just like, that's how you know spring is around the corner.
Spring, it's a metaphor. Baseball is still a metaphor for all the goodness.
I know, and I'm glad that we have it. So there you go. We are going to kick things off here about a very layered, very detailed story that you wrote, Jakob. And if you don't mind, I feel like we really need to unpack this because as I understand it, in Leland, there's a local controversy that has erupted involving Leland Lighthouse Youth for Christ, and that is a youth ministry. It's affiliated with a national organization, right? But it's run locally by two individuals who are missionaries. Their names are Micah and Kaya Kramer, and there's a lot to this. So you write really detailed and well about this in your story, about how it really kind of started off with the Kramers volunteering at schools. And then it has sort of snowballed into this larger story, which is something that you've reported on that has come to the Township Commission in the form of, you know, trying to get in front of the Planning Commission to get a special land use permit to open up what they're calling a youth clubhouse in a commercial zone that can allow for clubhouses, but only with a special land use permit. Did I kind of get that almost correct?
You did a great job. It's a really complex story, yeah.
So give us kind of the Cliff Notes versions of how we started with individuals, you know, volunteering at K through 12 schools to a lot of controversy around this entire group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Micah and Kaya Kramer, dynamic, in their mid-20s. They show up in Leland about a year and a half ago, I guess, May, June of 2024. And missionaries, Youth for Christ. Micah's family, his uncle Jim Van Steenhouse in particular, has had roots in Leland for some years, a few years before the pandemic. And they, as missionaries do, they want to kind of recruit their flock. And they volunteer inside Leland Public School to kind of... So young people, students, teenagers, minors, but also 18-year-olds can get to know them, and they set up this an unofficial ministry in a building that Micah's uncle owns, kind of in the Fishtown Harbor Square. But also occasionally they'd have young people over to their home. Pretty quickly, parents begin to voice concern. They feel as though they're recruiting students inside school. To kind of proselytize to them outside of school, and that they don't always feel that they know what the students are getting into. They don't feel they feel as though this might be done behind their backs as parents. Fast forward to early this school year, September or so. These concerned parents begin writing letters of concern. More than 100 of them are sent to this young couple to stop in their language, pursuing their children, and they also go to the head of Leland School, the new superintendent, who, this leads to Micah and Kaya Kramer no longer volunteering within the school.
Okay. So I want to kind of unpack this too, because I know that there is a real separation of church and state when it comes to public schools, and these are public schools. And, the reality is like young people, including, kids under the age of 18, do have the right to pray, worship while they're on school grounds. However, and Beth, I feel like maybe you know a little bit about this. There are some rules in which you can't necessarily be recruiting people for religious purposes during school hours. Is that correct? Am I correct in that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a complicated issue because, students are still Americans who have First Amendment rights and freedom of religion, freedom of speech. So I think this has always been, even when I was in high school, I remember the same thing. It's complicated. Students often, when I was in high school, would meet before school around the flagpole and have, prayer, holding hands together, praying on campus or meetings after school. So it gets a little, it's a complicated issue, I would say.
And when it comes to consent from parents, that is also a very real issue, right? Parents have the ability to say no to their children if they want to go to, youth group hangouts, if they don't want people to try to recruit them for any sort of purposes, right? That is a big, that's a big right of parents.
And I think, just to clarify, typically, the rules would be for religious groups and public schools that they have to be voluntary, can't be mandatory,
right.
Have to be student initiated, which is maybe a big issue that came up here, and student led. So if a school has any other kind of curriculum or extracurricular activities like chess or drama, they have to allow religious groups to meet, but they can't deny access to them during non-instructional time. So secular and religious clubs both can exist within the school system, but again, it has to be a student initiative.
Sure.
So having these folks volunteering in school maybe I don't know the full story, but that could have been part of the issue there.
So, and the way that your story starts out, I guess one of the paragraphs you were talking really about these young women who were, our students in the school and were inviting people to go to youth group, essentially, go to Sunday night youth group. So they were initiating, but they were doing it on behalf of these two former volunteers. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's certainly where the concerned parents and community members, they believe that students are recruiting on their behalf or pursuing. At a few of these public meetings, the word pursue has come up, and it's been interpreted different ways, both a kind of a Christian religious definition of the word pursue and the definition that you might choose if you were suspicious of this.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I think there was, there was a paper that had been published, locally out in Leland where a lot of these concerns were raised. I think Youth for Christ nationally, just like, maybe a lot of organizations of that scale, with clubs all over the country, but they raised issues that, other franchise groups, other clubs within this organization have had scandals. There have been sex abuse scandals. There's been discrimination against LGBTQ plus people. It doesn't necessarily mean that this chapter here has those same allegations, but there were concerns raised about the larger Youth for Christ organization. And then I think Jakob could speak to this more with the planning side of it and what happened this week. But there's also a concern from the Leland business owners. I think not even just the religious nature of the club because they're concerned about religious, but because of how it fits in with the zoning. And, Leland, a lot of people in Leland want to see the spaces there, which are restricted and limited, be used for businesses that will bring people into the community. But I'll let, Jakob talk more about that.
So yeah, let's kind of transition from, we're talking about this, these volunteers, they start to form relationships with young people in the K through 12 school system. They volunteer for about a year, maybe a little bit over a year, maybe longer. In September, they're asked not to volunteer anymore. And yet, also happening at the same time is a property. And this is, I believe it's Micah's uncle who owns this property. And it is in that very highly sought after area in Leland. and
in Fishtown,
in Fishtown, and it is zoned commercial.
It's C1 zone commercial. Now clubs are technically allowed, but one of the kind of the minutiae that the lawyers were arguing, including at the Planning Commission meeting last night, which by the way was held in Northport Public School because a Planning Commission meeting in early December was canceled because there was overflow.
Wow.
There were hundreds of people there.
Yeah.
Sought after space, C1 property in Leland, and many business owners have expressed opposition to a special use permit being granted to them. This is a layered story, right? So this is Micah Kramer's uncle, Jim Ben Steenhouse, who goes by the moniker the Bear Man.
Bear Man.
He was, I believe, a banker in Houston who was quite successful financially. About 10 years ago, perhaps now 10 and a half now, he was attacked by a grizzly bear out in the Canadian Rockies, survived, and believed the divine intervention had saved his life, devoted his life to spreading the gospel. And that led to him really enabling and bringing Micah and Kaya to Leland Youth for Christ.
So I guess if we're talking about a planning issue, and Beth has done a lot of stories about planning. They're asking for a special land use permit for a club. One of the primary arguments is that, is this a church or is this a club, or is there a difference? So is there anything in both of in your knowledge of planning commissions and C1 and these special land use permits that would say no to churches, yes to clubs, and is there a difference?
I think this is probably, what the lawyers are going to get into. And I haven't personally reported on this, but Craig Manning, our colleague, has been reporting on it for the Leland on Ticker, along with Jakob and others out there. And, this is a tough issue because, one, you have a lot of, I think, community conversation about the nature of the organization itself. Folks who are doing this project are talking about all the good that they're trying to do for the community. They're trying to give structure, a youth center. They're going to fix up this building. It's going to be bright and inviting and a nice, vital area for kids to go after school, safe place in the winter, all of that. So, and then of course you have folks who are concerned about the religious indoctrination, all of the other issues, and whether that's appropriate. So that's one issue, and that's probably what's taken up most of the oxygen in the room is people debating this sort of Youth for Christ mission and whether it's appropriate. But the zoning, when you have them to a special land use permit, that's really the key issue from an approval standpoint. It's not whether you like Youth for Christ or not. It's whether it's allowed.
Right.
And a special land use permit, it's not a use by right, meaning that the Planning Commission does have some discretion in deciding whether it meets the standards of a special land use permit. They're not guaranteed a permit. They have to meet the criteria, and that can sometimes be a subjective process. The businesses that Jakob was talking about, when they sent a letter of objection, this is almost 30 business owners who sent this letter. They argued that it is a church, it is not a club, that the zoning ordinance has standards for religious institutions, and that they felt that the standards of those religious institutions are not met on North Lake Street where this building is proposed. So that's what they're arguing. And Jakob he was at the meeting this week. I wasn't, so he can maybe speak more to this, but it seems like that's really where the lawyers are getting into the weeds, right?
The Kramers and their lawyer, Robert Parker, I believe his name is, are saying they're calling this a parachurch. They're saying the parachurch fits under a club. It is really a battle of words and definitions. You're right. That's right. It's a zoning conversation. It's a zoning argument, whether they get their ministry in the middle of Leland, but really right below the surface. And it was evident last night where there was a 3-hour Planning Commission meeting filled with, public comments. I would say about 60%. I counted it was 60%. Where people were opposed to granting a special use permit. In other words, were wary of Youth for Christ having a ministry downtown, and 40% were supportive, were advocates of it. It went on for 3 hours, and it was heated and passionate with perspectives on both sides, and brewing right below the surface was something far bigger than a zoning conversation. And this is happening in Leland County, but really when we talk about the separation of church and state and religious freedom, these are ever-present topics
Yeah.
that we've been debating throughout our history as a country, which makes it fascinating.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the other, layer of this, it's a very complex issue. The other layer of this is the retail environment that a lot of small business owners are in right now. That's also impacting these conversations. And I see this in downtown Traverse City as well, which we've always thought of as being sort of this retail mecca in northern Michigan. The mom and pop stores are struggling. So I think where the business owners are coming from is every time you take storefront space and convert it to something that might have a more limited or niche audience, it's one less attracting element into the village. And so in their business letter, they were talking about, this would be a space that would take up parking during the busy season. If you have got, high school kids driving down or whatever after school or hanging out in the summer there, this is a type of use that wouldn't really encourage a lot of extra jobs. It would probably have limited tax revenue. Yeah. So I think there's an element of like when you convert, crucial prime retail spaces into other uses, sometimes that causes a strain on the rest of the business community who's already maybe struggling in the, online retail environment that we have right now.
What about, and let me just, speak on behalf of owners' rights, right? So this bear man owns this property. Is that right? So, I mean, and I know this is why we have zoning. You can't just, you can't just set up, like a couch and a TV there and call it your house, right? Like,
right.
There are rules in place, but is there anything to be said about what this individual who owns this property wants to use it for, right? I mean, maybe he doesn't want to do something, tourist driven. And is the answer to that question, well, why'd you buy the property?
I have not met Jim Van Steenhouse. I've talked to many who have. In my stories, I quote some of the things he said at public at previous planning commission meetings. He's a fascinating individual. I mentioned surviving the grizzly bear attack. Real boisterous, big man, big personality.
Right.
In the November, I believe it was November 5th planning commission meeting, he he gave this interesting quote, which, it sounded some alarms among people, where he talked about he and his wife, the first time, or one of the first times that they visited Leland prior to them buying property in 2018, they were downtown and they, in the afternoon as school let out or after school let out, and they see two children, maybe ages 4 or 5 or 6, walking home from school unsupervised. And he says, this would never happen in Houston, Texas. Therefore, and he kind of makes this leap to, therefore, we need more of a religious presence in a youth ministry. And, for people reading a guy who's not from here, who's relatively new in town, comparing Leland, Michigan, a town of 400 or so people, to Houston, it's kind of out there.
Yeah, that's for sure. So where do we go from here? You mentioned that they are not going to be meeting again until March. Is that right?
No. The planning commission meets once a month.
Okay.
They will meet. They'll meet in February, and it seems as though that's when the planning commission will consult. They will have consulted with their lawyers, and they'll have a findings of fact to consult from. But they may not. They probably won't make their ultimate decision until March.
Okay.
Now, to throw another wrinkle into this, Ross Satterwhite, the chair of the planning commission, announced last night that he would resign.
Oh.
Because of commitments and being too
Okay.
busy, not necessarily because of this.
Right.
But whether or not they appoint, whether or not there's a 5th planning commission member by the time they vote or not, it's up in the air.
So this could delay it even further.
It could delay it, or, I talked to the township supervisor this morning on the phone, and he said, well, if they don't have someone to replace the outgoing planning commission chair by March, they could have 4 members, which could hypothetically result in a 2-2 tie, and a tie means that the special use permit is not granted.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess we're just going to keep watching and waiting for this.
This might be resolved by March. We don't know.
We don't know.
And in this case, the planning commission's, it's not a recommendation they would make to the township board. The planning commission's say would be it would be final, although that could be, if Apollo's Properties, which is the Van Steen house, and the Kramers loses, they could appeal to the zoning board of appeals. I should add that a Youth for Christ, a part-time resident of Leland, who's an attorney in St. Louis, Missouri, has written letters on behalf of Youth for Christ nationally to concerned parents, to the township board, and to the school board, basically threatening lawsuits if they don't get zoning approval. So this could get ugly.
Yeah. Yeah. Depending on how. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that story. It's a lot. It's very layered, and I would encourage people to go to glenarborsun.com and read the whole thing. You did a great job of giving a very thorough description of the backstory, of some follow-up, and I know that you're going to be continuing to report on this, so thank you. We're going to take a quick break here, and if you like staying connected to what's happening right here in our community, which I know you do, make sure you're following Currently with Crystal Frost. It's easy. Just head to crystalfrost.com, and from there, you can subscribe and follow on all the platforms in one place. That's the easiest way to do it. You can also search Currently on Facebook and head, and maybe hit follow at that point. It's really easy. There's a little like button, and you just hit it there. Or you can head to YouTube and search Currently with Crystal Frost, and you can hit subscribe so you never miss a new video. And don't forget, you can find Currently and Currently the Conversation wherever you get your podcasts. So be sure to subscribe so you have new episodes going straight to your podcast feed automatically. You don't have to search at all. This is a truly local show supported by local businesses and powered by listeners like you. Every watch, every listen, every follow, and every subscription make a difference. So help Currently keep hyper-local conversations happening. Support local storytelling today by watching, listening, following, and subscribing. All right, welcome back. Beth, we're going to switch it over to you, who is eternally busy. I don't know, how do you write all these stories? How many stories do you write in a day? Like 4?
Oh, maybe in a week, but thank you. That's I appreciate the vote of confidence.
We're going to kick things off with a story that we are recording this on Thursday. It's hitting people's, inboxes today.
Well, the episode airs on Friday. Yes.
Okay.
Yep, out today.
I'm not good at this back and forth thing, but it is out today, and it is all about a new development plan for Grawn. This is called the Village of Blackwood.
Yes.
I want to live there just because I'd be like, I live in the Village of Blackwood.
It sounds like it has a regal, old-timey, feel to it. Well, I always enjoy because I've been in Traverse City forever, when I learn something new about the area, when I'm doing my reporting, it's always something I enjoy too. And I did not know that Grawn's original name was Blackwood.
What? I didn't know that.
Yes. So Blackwood was founded in the 1870s by James Blackwood. And then when the Chicago and West Michigan Railway came through, which Blackwood helped build, the village was renamed from Blackwood to Grawn Station. Charles Grawn was one of the early superintendents of TCAPS.
Yeah, Chucky G. That's right.
And the grandfather of Milliken, going to government Milliken, so lots of history there. But so eventually it went from Blackwood to Grawn Station to Grawn. And it's this kind of, it's a small area out there that was downtown, the kind of vibrant village of Blackwood back in the day, that now is, it's kind of at the corner of US 31 and County Road 633 there. So if you're crossing the railroad tracks coming in, right now there's several parcels there that have some either old abandoned buildings on them. A couple of them are vacant. There's some mobile homes in that area. So this husband and wife team, Rob and Kate Mead, who are both involved in real estate, involved in a lot of development projects. They're residents of Grawn, acquired about 8 of those properties.
Wow.
So a pretty large chunk of land there, right near Brook Street, and they are planning a new development, and they are calling it the Village of Blackwood.
Also, I really wish that it would have just been Blackwood is cool. Like I want to live in Blackwood.
It'll be one of those things that people just end up shortening it to Blackwood. I'm sure. This is going to be going to the Blair Township Planning Commission later this month on the 21st. So they are proposing to build on these parcels 19 duplexes.
Wow.
So a total of 38 units. A majority of them will be 2-bedroom, a couple 1-bedroom ones. And when I talked to the Meads, one of the things that they were emphasizing is This is a really mission-driven project for them. They live in that community. They really want to bring some heart and vibrance back to the community, in their words. They talked about it being an affordable housing project. We typically in our area think of those as being rental units.
Yeah.
They are designing this project specifically to be starter homes.
Oh, cool.
To purchase homes. They have tried to design them in a unique way. They're working with Michael Fitzy, who is a really well-known local architect. We have some renderings of them in the story today. They described, and this is, I think, a fair assessment if you look at a lot of affordable housing projects in Traverse City or Northern Michigan, they do have sort of a cookie cutter look to them.
Yeah, sure.
Which is, part of it is just having to, build these developments in a sustainable way financially, because you're trying to keep the rents down. But they can sort of look alike, and they're trying to make these unique.
Oh, cool.
They really talked to me about the goal is, one, they want them to look nice so that they're attractive for the area and attractive for homeowners. They felt like going to a for sale model will encourage pride of ownership, so that the properties will have upkeep. The short-term rentals are not being allowed in this new neighborhood. They have been foster parents to teens for about a decade. A number of those foster kids that they helped raise are now adults themselves. And they talked about the challenge of young people cannot, as we know on the show, we've talked many times about housing. Young people have such a hard time even finding places to rent, much less buy anything in this area.
And they want to stay here.
They want to come back or raise families. A larger context of what's going on in Blair, as you and I have talked about a lot of growth out there. The new Meijer is breaking ground this year. Over the last several years, we've had Blaine's, we've had Amazon. Blair Township is investing in new trails, emergency services. So there's all kinds of growth happening in Blair Township. And if you're going to open, for example, a huge Meijer store, you need people to work at that Meijer store. If they live, 10, 20, 30 miles away, that makes it really difficult to keep those jobs in the community. So that's part of their motivation as well.
Well, I mean, I think it's really great to see any sort of revitalization going on in the Grand area in general. It did used to be kind of a cool hub. Back in the day,
Well, part of the design of this neighborhood is, they were talking about amenities that would encourage a neighborhood feel. So, a dog park, having a beta stop there, for easy transportation, wanting people to be able to walk outside. They do have properties on both sides of County Road 633 there, so they're kind of connected. The other kind of cool part of this project is there's an old... it looks like a vacant barn. It's really it's one of the old Blackwood buildings there, old historic building. They are hoping to move that off the site that it is now, a little more centrally located in one of their other properties, rehabilitate that and turn that into a community coffee shop and bakery for the neighborhood.
I love this whole project. I'm sorry, I'm sold. Village of Blackwood, sign me up. I think it sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So in terms of next steps, what people can keep an eye on is we got that planning commission coming up. This is a use by right. We just talked about a special land use permit with the Jakob segment. This is use by right, so it's a project that should typically be allowed as long as they meet the site criteria, which is what the planning commission will be looking at. If that gets the okay, they're hoping to break ground this spring. They're going to be building out these units, in a kind of rolling succession and occupying them as they build them. So over the next 16 months or so, once construction starts, these 19 buildings will be coming online, and they're going to start listing them for sale, they hope, this summer.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Fun fact, when I was born at Osteopathic Hospital in Traverse City, my mom brought me back to our home on Flamingo Drive, right near the Blackwood, where that's going to be. So look at that. I don't think there's anything there now.
You know the area well.
I was born in Blackwood.
That's a great name.
I know, it's so good. We are going to move on to talking about some city news, and you've got a couple of updates, not just on the Carnegie and Bijou RFPs, but also parking projects and all sorts of stuff. let's go on to that.
Yeah, well, we talked about some of these on the show last week, so I'll just do, as we wrap up here, just some quick updates on those stories since they're maybe top of mind for folks who heard the last episode. But several of the kind of requests for proposals that were being discussed at the City Commission this week, the Commission gave the okay to. So we are now going to an RFP process for the Carnegie building and the Bijou by the Bay.
Okay.
So folks who are interested or may have an organization interested in using one of those buildings, keep an eye on the city website. The RFP will be posted there. It may even be live by the time the show is out. They'll have the next month to put in applications. There will be mandatory site tours so you can see inside the buildings. The applications do spell out what the city is looking for.
Yeah.
We talked about this in the show, but they're really hoping for something that's cultural, environmental, nature-based, maybe history, arts, things like that. And they do have a desire to have, leases that at least cover the expenses of the building, which I think for the Bijou, they said would probably be at least $29,000 a year for a lease, and Carnegie's probably closer to $100,000, $95,000. So just keep that in mind if you're thinking about applying.
Yes.
But in the coming months, we'll see some proposals come forward. And then the same thing with the parking projects that we talked about last week. You and I spoke on the show about John Sachs, who had proposed for the city to give him several properties for free that they were originally going to use for a parking deck for $1. He would then in turn develop a public-private parking deck in partnership with the city. Commissioners have not said no to that idea, but they did say, well, if we're going to give away a lot of valuable city land, why don't we see what any other development proposals out there
Open it up.
And just make sure. Maybe John Sachs will have the best offer, but maybe something else will come forward. So that's another one that is not posted yet. But the city staff will be developing a request for qualifications that outlines, some criteria for developers. Once that comes back to city commissioners and they approve that, that will also be publicly posted.
All right. Important stuff. And thank you for reporting on it.
Of course.
I'm so happy that you understand things like this. Always, always, always. Before we wrap up here, I like to ask if you have anything that you're looking forward to this week, this weekend, coming up into next week. How about you, Beth? Anything?
I'm hoping to go see this Motown show at the City Opera House on Saturday night. I really love Motown music, and this is like a lot of great different artists coming to sing all kinds of Motown songs, so I'm excited about that. And then as a movie buff who also loves award shows, I will be watching the Golden Globes on Sunday. I don't know how many people left in America are still watching the Globes with me, but
I'm a Globie.
I love it, and I've been seeing a lot of the nominees in the last couple of weeks trying to catch up because right after Globe season, the Oscars are announced later this month, like who the nominees are, so I'm trying to catch up on those.
But now that they know that Beth is watching the Golden Globes, you're going to increase attendance.
Everybody will watch the Globes.
At least 2 to 3 more people may join me.
I like the Globes because I think the Globes don't take themselves so seriously, and it's a fun show to watch.
The celebrities get more drunk at the Globes, and that is a more entertaining show to watch for them.
Party at home, right?
Exactly.
That's right. How about you, Jakob? Anything you're looking forward to?
I did a lot of really good skiing last week.
Nice.
It's kind of warmed up, which, it's nice if you like sunshine, which of course we all do. But I wouldn't mind if temperatures got below 32 or 30 again at night, so I could do some more night skiing.
Some night skiing.
Because 40s get a little sloppy in the snow.
It's good for snow. It's great snowman weather out there.
Yeah. It definitely is. Yeah.
And great snowpacking weather.
Saw some kiddos making a snowman in my neighborhood, and I was just like, oh, that's cool.
That's joy. That's joy.
Yeah, it's pure joy. I love that. I am excited tonight, Friday, Cherry Blossom, the AMC Theater, has a Labyrinth 40th anniversary movie. Labyrinth was my favorite
40
movie.
Years.
40
oh my
years.
God.
How is that possible?
I know. And I remember we watched.
That means we're no longer
don't do that
kids.
math. Don't do that math.
Yeah, forget about it.
So
It's a great movie.
We're all in our 20s.
Yes.
I remember watching it at my aunt and uncle's house because they were the only ones that had a VHS player. And so we went to go get a video player and we all watched Labyrinth, and I was mesmerized. I was like, what is happening? What is happening with David Bowie? And all the crazy stuff and, Dance Magic Dance and all the great songs. So I'm excited. I'm going to get really into it going on Friday.
That sounds awesome.
See the old Labyrinth. Yeah. Well, thank you both for being with us today. And hopefully we'll see you soon. Jakob, thanks for all the reporting. And again, thanks to Beth Milligan and Jakob Wheeler for another great episode of Currently. We'll be back with more coverage of local news next week. We have special guest Ed Ronco from IPR News joining us. Again, be sure to subscribe to the show on all the platforms at crystalfrost.com. You can follow us on social media. We're everywhere, even TikTok, baby. And subscribe to Currently with Crystal Frost wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch the full show in live color on YouTube and Facebook. And of course, not live, it's recorded. Currently is a Compass local podcast produced by Pancake Boy Productions in downtown Traverse City. Big thanks to our sponsors, Old Town Playhouse, and to our lead supporter, West Shore Bank. We'll see you next week.